Askreddit Asks, ladies, what's the weirdest fetish a guy has dropped on you all of a sudden with little to no warning? Were you with it or against it?
Several years ago I was just talking to this guy on OkCupid. We hadn't even met yet. And he asked me if I'd be okay with erotic hypnosis. I was like, what? And he sent me a book. However, then he tells me that his last girlfriend and he had gotten into this elaborate fantasy roleplay and somehow decided that they were actually hypnotizing each other, and one night she convinced him she was not real and left him sobbing in a corner. And he wanted to keep doing that. Nope.
The hypnosis I'm okay with. The not real part, absolutely not. Get me out of here.
This is the shit I have been reading this thread for.
I had been with my ex for almost 2 years. We went for a walk in the woods one beautiful afternoon. About halfway through the trail he said he had something important to ask me. And of course I was expecting a proposal, since we had been talking about getting married for a while. Instead of proposing, he asked, if I let you get any kind you want, will you have sex with a dog so I can watch? Even something like 12 years later I still have trouble believing he actually asked that. I was very much against it, after I stopped laughing and realized he was serious. We did not stay together. I did not fuck a dog for him. LPT. Don't wait to let your significant other know about your deal-breaking kinks. Edit. Phew, this blew up. I went through some of the comments, but I feel like it would take several hours to answer everything, and maybe that's weird. IDK. So here are some answers to frequently asked questions. We lived together at the time and had a lease. The relationship effectively ended then and there. But we were sort of stuck together for a few more months. As it turns out, he'd been fucking his way through my friends, for a while anyway. Jokes on them. Despite the theories I've seen floating around, this was not his way of making me break up with him. As I learned later, his harmless bunny avatar was actually his persona. He had assured me that it was only a casual interest, and he was not a furry. I realized eventually that was wrong. I did not date him, knowing he was a furry. We weren't together for 12 years. We were only together around 2. Including dating and the actual official relationship. This happened roughly 12 years ago. Between maybe 2006 and the end of 2007. I might be getting the dates wrong. It's a while ago.
So this actually happened to my best friend Drew, who is a male, but it's worth sharing. He was fooling around with this girl he had met, and he could not get her off. They screwed countless times, and he would try anything he could to get her off, but he couldn't do it. She claimed the sex was great and never mentioned anything to make it better for her. So finally he just asks if there's anything he can do to get her off. And she says she has a kink, but it scares everyone off. He asks what it is and explains that he isn't most guys and he'll do whatever. And she asks, would you be willing to take a shit on me? I'm kind of weird, but there's something really sexy about having a guy treat me like garbage. My buddy was finally convinced to do said act, and propped over her midsection and lays a huge steamer right on her tits, stomach region as she plays with herself. To this day, he says he has never heard any girl come harder than when this turd made landfall on her. We later found out that Drew was not the first person we know she asked to dump on her. Several people we know told us they had been solicited, but only Drew made her dreams come true, I guess.
Not me, but friend told me a story about one of her Tinder dates. Fairly boring, non-sexual first date convo. She gets up to go to the bathroom, and as soon as she sits back down, dude is like, so how do you feel about pee play? Like, would you pee on me? I guess her going to the bathroom was enough of a segue for this guy.
I see you're a fellow fan of peeing.
Well, you're in luck tonight, pal. Guy told me he likes tall women, really tall women, wanted me to dress up and play at being a giantess. We were halfway through our first cup of coffee.
Lucky you weren't drinking espresso from a tiny cup, or he may have nutted right then. Edit. Gold. You're gonna make me nut. Musical score. Ali, I want to do see you turn into a giant woman. Musical score. That guy probably.
One guy wanted me to berate his small penis and tell him how worthless it was. I didn't want to do it. Because I have mad penis respect. But I did because I also believe in embracing your kinks.
You little pecker, you're worthless. Always showing up late. Quit taking your night classes. Can barely pay rent. You're nothing. Quote exclamation mark. Edit. My GF happens to share the fetish I think. This was the anniversary, URL redacted, gallery, FJ874K3, she made me earlier this month.
Mad penis respect, I'm stealing this.
Guy here, but this one confused the crap out of me. I started dating this girl and at first things were normal, but she started picking fights with me and then having angry sex. It got to the point that she literally refused to have sex without a loud shouting match first. It was really hard to break up with her because when I told we were through she thought it was foreplay. Eventually I had to just ghost her. It was really hard to break up with her because when I told her we were through she thought it was foreplay. Oh my god, lol. The way I pictured you saying this in a matter-of-fact and serious tone just made audibly laugh. I was dating a guy who confided in me, after I confided in him some of my more ethically ambiguous fetishes, that he wanted us to have daughters and raise them to be our sex toys. No thank you, Adam.
That is way too unsettling for me.
That's called incest pedophilia. It is double illegal. Nice bullet dodge.
What the actual fuck?
Not me, but a friend of mine was talking to this guy who said, before we go any further, I need to come clean about something. Please don't think I'm strange. I've got a really weird fetish. Instantly we think it's gonna be something extreme. Maybe involving bodily fluids. I don't want to kink shame, but just something downright gross, he says. I need to be wearing a fleece. Question mark. Question mark. Question mark. Patagonia was his preference. It's like innocent compared to the ones in this thread, but just bizarre.
Knife stuff. No warning at all. I knew he was kinky and slightly weird, but not, like, dangerously weird until he was having difficulty reaching orgasm. I said something along the lines of how can I help you finish, and he slides a fake magician's knife out of the nightstand next to him and said he had a stabbing fetish. Wanted me to pretend to be murdered by him. It was a nuclear red flag, but there I was. He's already inside me. So I'm like whatever. I'll go along with this. He came. I left. The next day my abdomen was totally beat the fuck up. Bruises all over my torso and chest from him jamming a stupid plastic knife into me. It opened my eyes to how sexual stabbing scenes are in horror films, as he explained that's where the fetish began. From growing up watching shit like Halloween. Never again those shudders. I grew up watching horror movies and it gave me a not wanting to be stabbed fetish.
My best friend told me about how she had been dating this guy for a few months and they took a camping trip together. They were having sex in the tent and he puts his forearm down on her neck and starts cutting off her air supply. She freaked and thought he was going to kill her, to later find out he had a choking fetish he never told her about. Edit. Since more than one person has asked. No, the relationship did not last.
So there's breaking out the surprise choking fetish. And there's breaking out the surprise choking fetish in the middle of the woods where there's no one around.
How fucking clueless do you have to be to just start casually killing somebody and expect them to not freak out?
I had a friend who told me some Tinder dude brought a backpack of fetish gear to their first date. And was surprised that she found it weird. I have to have my tools.
He's a boy's coughed. He comes prepared.
He was into blood play and wanted to make little cuts all over my body with a really pretty knife. Yeah, no thanks.
Why didn't he just wait for your period? Dot.
My boyfriend likes people to watch him pee. Not peeing on people or things. Just peeing in the toilet normally. It's weird, but honestly I'm into weirder.
Exhibitionism combined with water sports in a neat and non-messy way. Sounds like a lucky result for that combination if you're not into them. Edit. Gold on my cake day.
I have been dating this man for 2 years that I met on POF. About 6 months in, he told me he had a balloon fetish. He said he had been jacking off with them since he was a teen. And his fantasy was to have actual sex on one. He said he had always been afraid to tell anyone. but he sensed that I would be the type of person who wouldn't run away. At first I was like OMG. But then I was like fuck it. What's the harm in trying something new? So he brings out this huge 6-foot-long balloon that he has to blow up with an air pump. The thing is huge, and he tells me he owns a ton of them. All shapes and sizes. At first it was weird trying to straddle that humongous balloon and leaning over it so he could fuck me doggy style on it. All the while being terrified that it was going to pop in my face at any given moment. But I got used to it and we do it often. It has popped in my face quite a few times and we both get a good laugh. I figure if it makes him happy then why not? Also if anybody has any suggestions on new things to try with the balloons, let me know! !
My first partner was very experienced and knew what he wanted. Early into our physical relationship, he told me that he wanted me to slap him and tell him how he was a bad person. It was difficult for me to get on board with that. I'm a very nice person. What could I even say? I bet you don't recycle. Quote.
You scumbag. You leave your shopping cart right in the middle of the parking lot. Don't you.
Slap, your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. You are a very, bad person.
I once met a guy on Tinder who, out of nowhere, asked me if I could fuck his dog while he watched. I was very against it. Maybe it was some sort of alternative to ghosting. Ghosting is terrible, I know. I'll ask him, her to fuck the dog.
Most guys use their dog to pick up girls. This guy was trying to pick up girls for his dog.
Could this have been you, Eclecticst SEXBF?
There was one guy who was really into having a free household. Meaning, I guess, sex and nudity in front of the children. He was kinda vague about what he was suggesting. So I kept on trying to steer things back into the realm of sanity and be all, yeah, sexy times, nakedness, once the kids are in bed. But then he went into this elaborate fantasy about me showering with our teenage daughter, not actually ours. This was still in the realm of fantasy, and I was like, wait, you're actually getting off on the idea of the kids being involved? Or at least witnessing all of this? And he was like, yeah, and I was like, I'm out. I don't have a ton of limits. But kids is one. He also kept calling me, mommy. Even after I asked him to stop. I actually have a child who is still young enough to call me mommy. If there is one guaranteed way to turn me off, that would be it. If I recall, he also referred to his dick as his fuck stick. That would be a hard no.
That is fucked up on so many levels.
Was seeing a lawyer while I was in college and he was into dick shaming and a chastity cage. I really liked him so I indulged him some. Kept his little dick cage keys on my key ring. The whole shebang, but he could not separate fetish and life. So our whole relationship turned into fetish instead of an actual relationship.
Do you still have the keys? It made me laugh that he had to sit down to pee and had to go through all the security stuff for work at the courthouse.
Should have sprung for the chastity butt plug.
He wanted to paint my toenails. Then ejaculate on them. I was down as long as I approved the color. He did a great job. Even put little hearts on the big toes and gave me a foot rub. It didn't do much for me sexually. But I got a pedicure and we had fun. Edit. He did wait for the polish to dry first. There was some dirty talk. Though mostly I just wiggled my toes at him. It made him laugh and turned him on. It was fun.
Wholesome.
Not sure if this counts, but I worked as a pro dominatrix for a couple years and my ex-girlfriend and I would often do duos together as it was a nice way of spending time together, making money, and we had great chemistry together as doms. Years later she is still a dear friend. She hits me up letting me know she has a really well-off client who had a very specific breath play fetish. Since I was very experienced with breath play and felt very comfortable doing it safely, she asked if I'd be down to make a couple $100. I get to the dungeon. We smoke weed and wait for the guy. He comes in with a bunch of rolls of plastic. Turns out, he had a very specific fetish for this kind of plastic, that was very smooth and soft. It wasn't only a breath play, suffocation scene. But he wanted to be totally mummified in said plastic. I'd say he was in his late 50s, early 60s, just looked like someone's dad. We spent 2 hours binding him in this plastic. Putting plastic over his face until he'd scream his muffled safe word. As he'd gasp for air. And then sitting on his mummified metapod-looking body and smoke joints on top of him. Tickle him, and then ignore him and talk amongst ourselves. It all looked like something straight out of a Dexter scene, and honestly it would probably look very creepy to an outsider. This cycle of mummifying him and suffocating him lasted for 2 hours. Until he asked if we could cut him free. Then he jerked off for like 1 minute and blew his load all over the pile of plastic. Weirdly enough, nicest and most normal client I've had. During our aftercare session, this is where you encourage your sub. Tell them how well they did. Cuddle them. And check in with them so they're not traumatized by the scene. He spilled his guts to us. He said he felt out of control in his life, and having his breath controlled and wrapped in the plastic made him feel safe and comforted him.
Not me, but I heard a story from a friend one time who got with this guy one night and he said, "I like being a little rough. Are you okay with that?" She, without thinking much of it, decides to play along, and the dude slaps the shit out of her and says, "You like that? Bitch!" Exclamation mark. She knocked out real quick. I like being a little rough. Terran nuclear launch detected.
I was walking to my college, and on the way I saw a couple walking in front of me. I was late for my class, and when I rushed past them I heard the girl say, "I knew you were into weird fetishes. But the most I'll do is piss on somebody." Don't even wanna know what the boy said. Scat. Probably.
Skabadapa diddly doddliski bababadabom.
Was talking to a guy online on a dating site. One of those guys that seemed kind of too good to be true. Out of my league, good looking, great job, owned his own home, traveled nationally and internationally once a year on vacation. I figured there had to be a catch. He had a cuckold fetish. I'll give him this. At least he was honest about it early on rather than waiting until I was invested in a relationship. He was also very polite about it when I declined. I mean, go figure, a guy with a cuckold fetish wouldn't be sensitive to a woman bruising his ego.
I was seeing this guy a couple of months. At this point we were exclusive and sleeping together. But weren't much more serious than that. One night, we're getting hot and heavy. He's about a millimeter from actually penetrating me when he stops where he's at and asks me, "Do you trust me?" I wasn't sure what that meant, so I asked him exactly that. "What do you mean?" He wouldn't explain. He just kept repeating, "Do you trust me?" ? Eventually I sort of snapped at him and said, "I mean, we're literally about to have sex." "So yeah, I guess so." "Why?" ? Without answering he just open palm slapped across the face. Hard. I kicked him out of my house and our relationship dissolved shortly thereafter. The kicker, while we were getting to know each other, he told me his ex was into some really rough stuff and that he hated it. And that, kids, is called projection. Edit. No shame for having kinks. Provided everyone involved is healthy and consenting, and legal. But please don't spring kinks on your partners, and definitely don't actively lie about yours if you ever want to try it in the future.
I went over to his house for the first time and he wanted to go from the first kiss to fisting. He was just awkward and had never had sex before, so he didn't know how to broach the subject. I politely said no and we laughed it off and continued with our date. He turned out to be an overall sweet dude and we're still together. Still haven't let him fist me though. Edit. Wow. Gold, silver, and 11k upvotes for not getting fisted. Thanks guys.
Gotta respect the long game.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, and above all, have an excellent day, you incredible people.